There's definitely a big shift compared to a few years ago.
We're completely liberated the workplace.
It shows that it improves productivity and morale and these other things.
So I'm a teacher. I think it's something that can't really be replaced with AI.
Whether we like it or not, we have to learn about these technology things, right? And we have to accept it.
Okay, so I've spoken to people on the streets. I've gotten a range of responses from not being fearful at all, being open to remote work, and even adapting to AI in this current moment. But I'm still as confused as ever. So I've invited 3 friends, Neil, Jeffrey, and Bridget, to further this conversation back at the studio.
Okay, so we just watched my report on whether or not we are facing a revolution in the workplace. And we're going to be talking about it today with 3 very esteemed guests, starting with Bridget Troneri, Research Fellow at the Lee Kuan Yew Center for Innovative Cities, Jeffrey Koh, owner of Nerve Creative and Flaps Lab, and Neil Humphreys, writer, podcaster, radio and TV host. And we're going to be exploring it with 3 different questions. Have attitudes towards work changed for the better? Is AI really after our jobs? And is it time to retire the standard 9 to 5, Monday to Friday work culture? Jeffrey, your question. Have attitudes towards work changed for the better? And what is your response?
Employee expectations are getting unrealistic.
And it's interesting you say that because last year, I believe it was in October, you were involved in a public spat where there was an intern who agreed to a physical interview at your company, but at the last minute, with no context, requested for a video interview. And you turned that request down. So with that context, why do you feel that way?
I've been running my own company for 22 years. So I've definitely seen a shift in attitudes, I think over the past 5 years with this work from home thing, hybrid model. But the truth is there are still work that needs to be done in the office. So call me a boomer, but I think the creative industry needs to have a work in the office model. I think it helps to germinate ideas, and there's that tension that is good to a certain extent. So as far as expectations are concerned, I mean, it's not wrong for an employee to have expectations of a company. But I think what I find these days is a lot of the fresh grads and the young employees are having unrealistic expectations in terms of having instant success, instant benefits. I call it the microwave generation to a certain extent, where things need to come fast and good. But good things just take time.
I read your post, Jeffrey. I remember it very well. My first reaction was, why, Jeffrey? Why? Why stir the hornet's nest? Why? Nothing good will come from this. Why? But at a serious note, I for the most part agreed with what you said.
I'm just wondering, I think after COVID, a lot of people were very burnt out, including myself, especially because I have kids at home and we were also homeschooling and trying to do our work and all of this. So I'm just wondering, what the role of burnout, and maybe young people are questioning, like, should I be, doing this kind of hardcore financial sector job, and what's going to come of that?
I'll relate an example of my 3 boys. I think when they were younger, they dreamt of becoming YouTube stars. Yeah. So they set up their own little YouTube channel, doing silly things and all this, thinking that they can make it big as stars.
Same as me. I always thought I'd be a YouTube star.
And make a ton of money.
Yeah.
But what I told them was, you can make it, but then you got to realize that there may be a million of people who didn't make it. So you may be one of the lucky one.
Do they still have the dream, or they're not dreaming of becoming a YouTube star anymore?
I put a stop to that.
You beat it out of them, haven't you?
You're going to get me into trouble again.
Crush their dreams with your kiasuism.
I mean,
it's over.
If they can do that, of course, I'll be happy for them. There's nothing wrong with being idealistic in life. But what is equally more important is to be realistic. And that is also the reason why I think part of my frustration about that intern came from that as well, because I've taken in interns pre-COVID. I've seen them going through the proper education system where they were physically in school, they were properly taught, and the interns that I took in were basically, I think they just joined school right before COVID hit, and when COVID hit, everything was home-based. I've seen how the standards have dropped tremendously. Year 3 students about to graduate and go out to the workforce, totally unprepared. This HBL and COVID thing, I think it's definitely seen a shift in terms of the mentality of the kids, because a lot of them think that everything can be done virtually. If I can learn virtually, why do I need to be in office? Why do I need to go to school?
So just to also play devil's advocate, what if it's about older generation having to adapt to not just technology, but future mindsets of the workforce?
I think that's a cop-out. I think it's a scary cop-out, and I'll tell you why. We're talking about Singapore now specifically.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about our communication abilities in Singapore. I think home-based learning and this adapt to virtual learning has made it easier to not communicate with other human beings. When I do workshops online, I have to leave more time for Q&A because I'm inundated with questions. They can just type the questions in the box and I've got to answer them one after one. I do it in person. Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Anybody? No one? These people have to go into the workplace whether they like it or not. And they're going to have to communicate whether they like it or not. This is going to be easier for some than for others, but I don't make up the rules of the workplace.
Pros and cons, right? And personally, because I was teaching online, I found it very difficult. Some people had their cameras off. I'm like, are they listening? Like, is anybody out there? I much prefer teaching in person and that interaction and all of that. But I think for some, it was actually quite good for them.
But then it's also that debate about the IQ and the EQ, right? I mean, you can pick up all the skills you need online, on YouTube, on Google. But then what about the EQ part? Back to that point when that saga broke, I don't think it's a generational thing. I think what shocked me during that time was the fact that a lot of people were saying that these days it's no longer what the employers want, it's what the employees expect out of the company. I think there's just something wrong in this world where they see things only from their point of view. That, I think, is unrealistic.
I might have to push back a bit on that, just a little bit. Of course, I agree in essence with what you're saying, but there's also a part of me that thinks that I've been a part of Singaporean companies that have literally stepped out of the jungles of Tekong as if they'd just finished NS and applied that mentality into the workplace, what we call the Tekong culture. I have seen journalists, young journalists, reduced to tears. For what? For writing a bad story? For getting a paragraph wrong? Nothing is worth making this person cry over. I used to know editors who used to use it as a badge of honor
to make that.
if they made interns cry. What are you, a child? You're a masochist?
It's interesting that you're all bringing up the topic of workforce and how people need to adapt, which is directly related to, is AI really after our jobs? Bridget.
I think I'm a little bit worried now with ChatGPT. At first I was like, well, what's all this hype about? Like, surely it can't be that good. And then I actually tried it and I was like, oh, this is a little bit scary. I didn't expect it to be so good. So for example, like I typed in, this was just a few weeks ago, what is digital transformation in Singapore, which I've actually written a whole paper on. And it came out with everything that I could have written.
I've had conversations with artists, with friends, but I think it's here to stay. It's never going to run away, it's going to get better. But what differentiates the humans from the mid-journey and the AI is with values and with emotions that we bring to our work.
I'll go a step further. I see the positives from AI here. I take everything you've said. Intellectual property is another concern. This is where I think it's a good thing, and particularly for Singapore. We cannot keep churning out human robots. We have been churning out human robots anyway in the way we often educate and spoon feed, and that needs to change. I'll give you a very good example. A few years ago, outside this tuition centre, was their star piece, this English piece, and that they'd written at the tuition centre, this primary P6 kid. And he said, this piece got the kid A++++, whatever, in his PSLE results. So join our tuition centre now. That piece alone would stop me from ever sending my daughter to that tuition centre. It was so systematic, so formulaic, so predictable. That piece, like many that are churned out, sadly, in our tuition centres, are hardly any different to what's being churned out by AI. I do not believe any AI software can replicate human empathy in the same way. Where does my empathy come from? It comes from me growing up poor. It comes from being from a one-parent family and my parents divorcing when I was a little boy and having no money and feeling insecure and feeling vulnerable. And then when I come to a country like Singapore, my empathy for hawkers, for the poor, for the vulnerable, for the needy, it's real. and it comes across in my writing. We need more unique, original, creative, empathetic voices. And if AI accelerates that, I think that's a good thing.
I think AI will take away lots of jobs. From people who refuse to think and
There you
behave
go.
like a decent human being. At the end of the day, AI, Mid-Journey or whatever not, it's all created by human beings, and they are the ones that are imputing, I think, based on their own experience. I mean, we still need to relate to our clients, relate to our suppliers, relate to our vendors, whatever not. I mean, AI can only do that much at this point in time in terms of churning out perfect answers. But perfection is not what we are in the real world.
Let's talk about books for a second. My daughter's 14. There is evidence to show that that generation are reading more children's books than any generations in years. Physical books. Why? That makes no sense. But to me, it makes perfect sense. They want the human experience. They want the empathetic connection to the characters in the books.
I read this article recently by Carl Frey, who's an Oxford academic, and he was actually one of the first economists to predict that, you know, AI is going to take 50% of our job, but he was still kind of a firm believer that as many jobs as AI will displace, there'll be new jobs created. So I think, you know, what the key takeaway is that young people and even ourselves, like, we do need to be digitally savvy. We need to upskill ourselves so that we can work along, you know, the AI.
I mean, history has also proven that those who refuse to change are often the ones that will be eliminated.
So, you know, speaking of changing work behaviors, work cultures, there's been a lot of talk of whether it is finally time to adopt this new working model where it's no longer Monday to Friday, it's no longer 9 to 5. But what are your thoughts about that aspect of work culture?
It is already dead. There's 2 points to this. You shouldn't have to go to the office if you don't need to, but there will be times when you absolutely must. But this idea that if you just, you know, spend too much time at home, you're going to be on Farm Heroes or ordering pizza or whatever, whatever your project is, whatever your assignment is, whatever your deadline is, you either meet it or you don't. And if you don't meet it on a consistent basis, then you fire them.
I totally don't agree.
Oh, here we go. This is why I did this. Okay, go on.
Work from office is still the best form because I think it allows me to basically try to teach them what I know, to basically make changes on the spot so that we don't have to end up, I think, setting a meeting online for everybody. And back to the question about the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, I think I laughed so hard when there was talk about moving to a 4-day work week. So we still have clients coming to us at 6 p.m. on a Friday, telling us that I would like to have the changes by Monday morning at 9. So where does that leave us to make the changes? Is that on the Friday night?
There's no one size fits all. You know, I think, and it's just going to differ between different industries, different stages of life. I do dream about a 4-day work week because as a working parent, I just can't get everything done on the weekend.
I guess also that's why a lot of people end up being unhappy because they struggle to find that balance.
I don't want to get locked into you must be in the office by 8:55 and you must leave at 5:05. I think there should be a flexibility. There will be Friday nights when you've got to stay back. But to add to that, could you not then say to your staff, right, you did the Friday, you stayed to 8 p.m, great job, we met the deadlines, we satisfied the annoying client, Monday morning you come in at lunchtime.
I mean, I think the 9 to 5, I think post-COVID, there's sort of no going back to, you know, traditional ways of working.
I think you're right to have that flexibility because if you're not flexible, you'll lose your good staff and you'll be stuck with the crap ones. That's the reality of the workplace. So that's where they do hold a bit of power, and rightly so. Young, talented people should have that power.
As much as I talk about the importance of flexibility for women with children, etc., I like to go to the office, and I'm pretty happy with going 9 to 5 because I have that separation. But, you know, my husband, he loves working from home.
It's also an industry thing. So we can't get caught up in this black or white. It's case by case, personality by personality. It's also industry by industry. If I'm having open heart surgery, I don't want my doctor doing it virtually. I want him in the room with me, with the scalpel standing over my chest.
You don't want like a robot with the scalpel?
Yeah, I don't want him on the Zoom going, right, bit to the left, bit to the right. I want him in the room. It's not ever going to be a one-size-fits-all with this kind of argument.
There are other roles where you might not even have a choice. Like, the people supporting the heart surgeon, the bus drivers, the F&B staff. Teachers, yeah. So how does that fit into your belief that there needs to be flexibility in the workplace?
It doesn't. I mean, it's a simple answer to that. It doesn't. My wife is a teacher, and she hates the fact that I spend most of my day alone at home in my boxer shorts pretending I'm working when she gets up at 6 o'clock every day and does a real job. However, even my wife's school, they don't expect her to hang around for hours and hours afterward. I still think there's a little bit of wiggle room.
It's almost like flexibility is the most important theme throughout the future of work. With that, we've come to the end of the discussion. We've had a wide range of perspectives about how work is changing. And if you want to find out more, you can check out A World Without Work, Technology, Automation and How We Should Respond by Daniel Susskind, and The Future of Work, the insights you need from Harvard Business Review. You can find those books at your nearest library as well as the NLB mobile app. And to find out more about how the workforce is changing and other exciting issues, you can check out the Read to Be Sure website. And now a question for you. What do you think the future workplace will look like? Is it still possible to find a fulfilling job with work-life balance, or is it just a pipe dream? Leave your comments below and tell us what you think.